Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to do a video on trying to conceive, PCOS, pregnancy, all that jazz, and just kind of tell you my story. I don't honestly know a whole lot about PCOS. I mean, like I've done some reading, but I kind of feel like I keep getting conflicting stories. But the long story short is I am a plus size girl, and I think I've had PCOS for a really long time, like all the way into my adolescent years, but no one could really figure it out. And there weren't a whole lot of signs, so there wasn't really a whole lot to figure out because I was super regular on my cycles, like clockwork, until I was probably in my mid 20s. So, fast forward to later 20s, I got married at 28, and my husband and I kind of were thinking about a family, but we weren't sure like when that would be. So I basically went to the doctor to find out where I was because I hadn't had a cycle in probably like 9 months. Um, Ironic, right? So I went to the doctor to find out where I was. Like, is this possible for me? Because I hadn't had a cycle, so I didn't really know anything like what was going on. Um, and so they started to do some tests. We started talking about family planning, and we wanted to find out like what my hormone levels were at and everything. So basically, what they did is they gave me progesterone. I want to say it was like 100 milligrams. I took it once a day for 10 days. And then at the end of the 10 days, I think you get up to like 2 weeks, and your cycle's supposed to start at some point between the time you end and then like 2 weeks out. So my cycle started right away. And then on day 3, they had me come in for a blood test to test my FSH levels, which is your egg reserve. And everything came back normal, everything was fine. So basically, we decided, okay, everything was great. Like, let's just see. So we didn't prevent for about 6 months to a year. And then at that time, we were kind of getting more serious about starting a family. So I went back because, again, things were like irregular. I hadn't gotten pregnant or anything. We hadn't had any scares. So I went back, they put me back on the progesterone, and we did it again for 10 days. And then at the end of the 10 days, it took a little bit longer this time for my cycle to start. I want to say it was like 12 days out. I was kind of getting nervous, like, is this really going to happen or what's going on? But it did, I did have a cycle, and then she put me on metformin. So I guess being that I'm plus size and she told me that I had PCOS, but it was like really vague. I mean, like they didn't even give me a whole lot of detail. So she put me on metformin, 1,000 milligrams twice a day. Now, if you don't know anything about metformin, it's a diabetic medication. It helps control your insulin levels because apparently I am insulin resistant PCOS. And there's also another type where you don't have an insulin issue. But I have insulin resistant PCOS. And so she put me on that medication. It's so awful, you guys. When you first start taking it, it's like you're nauseous, you have massive headaches. It's really bad. But it does pass. So if you are on metformin or if you're thinking about getting put on it, it does pass. It takes a couple of weeks and it's rough to begin with, but you will get through it. Um, so then basically, she wanted to see if I would ovulate. And so they started me on the metformin as soon as my cycle started. And then I think I came back in for a blood test. I want to say around the 2 week mark because we had no idea when I was like typically some like ovulating, because I guess you're supposed to ovulate around 2 weeks after your cycle starts, but it varies from person to person. So I guess to be in like the generic range, since we had no idea, she tested it at about 14 days, and the levels came back pretty low. I think it was a 4. I forget what the test was called, but I guess if you Google it to see if you ovulate, you'll find out. But my value came back at a 4. And so I was excited because I had read anything above a 4 is ovulation. But they had told me, oh no, that's too low. You didn't ovulate. So I thought, whatever. I was kind of discouraged. So we were going to try another month on the metformin. So I was going to continue on the metformin with 1,000 milligrams twice a day and see if maybe like it would build up in my system, and then I would ovulate the following month. And long story short, I think my husband and I were in like Nordstrom Rack, and we were shopping and like, just kind of like living life. And I had this massive dizzy spell. I mean, like I had to stop in my tracks. I grabbed my husband's arm and was like, don't move. I'm going to pass out. And I got really scared. I thought, there's a health issue. What is going on? Like, is this the medication? Am I going to have a stroke? I mean, because I'm sort of a little bit of an obsessor like that, hypochondriac, if you will. Um, so anyway, I just kind of like tried to ignore it and think like, I don't know, maybe I was hungry because we hadn't eaten and it was sort of late. And so I don't know, maybe a couple days later, I was on my way home and I was kind of nauseous and it just, not feeling right. And I thought, I'm going to take a pregnancy test. Like, just let's rule it out, right? Like, she said I didn't ovulate. Let's prove that. And you guys, the line was like super pale, but it was pink. And I freaked out. It was like, no way, right? Like, this is a faulty test. So I think I took like 100 more tests, like a normal woman. And it kept coming out pink. And I will say though that like it was super early because I want to say it was like 10 days maybe after this test to see if I ovulated and stuff. So I mean that would be like really early to see if you were pregnant. And everything I was reading was like that's too early, you're definitely not going to know. And I was just like no way, no way. Like I'm not pregnant. They told me I didn't ovulate. Like how that was by a blood test. So I went into the doctor's office. They did another pregnancy test on me, the blood test, and it was positive. Oh my God, I was pregnant. It was like such a shock. I was so excited. How could this be? Like, boom, in your face, doctor. I did ovulate clearly. So, I guess everything I read was right. Everything above a 4 is ovulation. So, I was sick. I was having all the symptoms and everything. But I did end up miscarrying. That pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. So sad. That was devastating for me. Um, and I guess I can do another video on that. If you're interested, if you are, like message me in the comments below and I'll think about doing a video. But I did miscarry and that was terrible. It was an awful experience. Um, but, I wasn't even sure if we were going to try again or like, because once you go through that, I mean, if you've had a miscarriage, it's so hard to like carry the joy of a pregnancy again because you're so scared it's going to happen. So I just didn't know what was going to happen. We let some time pass and we decided, you know what, we do want to try again because we did want to have a family. So back to the metformin. And I want to say like the first time again we tried, I got pregnant again. So metformin really worked for me. I'm not diabetic. My sugar levels were like borderline high at the time. So I don't know. I guess that has something to do with it. And I know like if you have PCOS, a low sugar diet, like low carb and all that stuff does really help. And before, I want to say like 6 months before I got pregnant again, I did do like no sugar. I cut out caffeine. I was eating really healthy. I mean, I didn't have like no sugar because who does that? But I mean, I'm plus size. It's kind of like comes with the territory, right? So I did have sugar, but it was really in like small quantities. And I was just trying to kind of like get healthy and see if that would make a difference. And boom, I got pregnant again right away. And this time it stuck. So I had got pregnant and I actually just had my munchkin about 7 months ago. He's 7 months old. Just this last Sunday, he turned 7 months. So it's been a little bit. I am going backwards quite a ways. But it can happen. You can get pregnant with PCOS. Metformin really worked for me. If metformin didn't work, the next step was to go on Clomid, which is to stimulate your ovaries to produce more eggs. I'm not the girl who has like PCOS and has like a bunch of cysts on her ovaries, like, very visible, or anything that causes pain or like cysts rupturing, because I've had friends that have gone through that where they've had like lots of cyst issues on their ovaries and they've known about it. Like it's caused pain, it's caused discomfort, or they've had like surgeries to remove them. I've never gone through any of that. My PCOS, I guess, has been pretty mild in terms of that. So, my trying to conceive story wasn't super difficult in terms of like what I had to do to get pregnant. It was more like figuring out I did have PCOS. Metformin really worked for me. It worked right away both times. So my insulin does play a role in my fertility. So if you're going through this and you just started and you're kind of like not sure what to do, maybe talk to your doctor about it. If you're kind of thinking you have PCOS, Google it. There's a couple of things that you can look for. Male pattern hair growth is one, and that was a big one for me. Like so embarrassing, you guys, but I have like male pattern hair growth. Like shaving your big toe status. Like, gross, but it's totally true. And I'm saying this because although it's embarrassing to share that on YouTube and with the world, it really helped me to find people who were telling their story and it was real and they were going through it. So hopefully this will help some of you. Male pattern hair growth is one. Irregular cycles is another. I think acne is another one, but I never had an issue with that. Mine was pretty much, the male pattern hair growth, irregular cycles. And then another one is I had a really hard time losing weight. Like, I went through a time where I was working out like 6 days a week. I was super healthy. I was eating great. I had lost, like, I want to say 50 pounds, and I was feeling really good. But I had to work out like an athlete and eat like a bird. So like I had to do both. Eat like a bird and work out like an athlete. And it was a struggle, a serious struggle to lose weight. So basically that's what happened. And then when I got pregnant, I'll do another video on that. So this is like part one, trying to conceive with PCOS. It is possible. And I will do another video on my pregnancy story because that's kind of like, I want to go more in detail about like kind of how they scare you and all that junk being plus size. So yeah, that's my trying to conceive story. And it worked. So if you have PCOS, if you're trying to conceive, if you don't know where to start, see your doctor, talk to your doctor about options. I really had to push for a lot of things. One more thing I want to add. Because I miscarried, I was super afraid I was going to miscarry again. And PCOS is a hormonal imbalance, right? So I figured after doing some reading, I read a lot of people had tried progesterone supplements while they were pregnant to maintain the pregnancy. Because when you initially get pregnant, if your progesterone levels are low, I have read that you can miscarry. It can cause miscarriage. But there's not like a real, like, I guess for sure way to know. And I fought with my doctor, like, you would not believe I changed doctors so many times because I kept asking, like, can you give me progesterone or like test my levels? And they wouldn't even test me. They told me that I had to wait until I miscarried 2 to 3 times before that would even consider, before that would even be considered an option, which that's crazy. Like, how many lives do I have to lose? How many little babies and munchkins and joy do I have to lose in my life before you even consider testing my hormones? Seriously? Like, that's so easy. So I fought tooth and nail. They did eventually test it, and it wasn't a normal range, but it was on the low side. Like, to me, that was, I mean, it's normal, but it's still like really low in that range. So I fought tooth and nail. Eventually, I found a doctor. They gave me progesterone supplements, and that is my belief is that that helped me carry to term. So because at 13 weeks, 12 or 13 weeks, your placenta takes over creating the progesterone. So you no longer have to take the progesterone supplements. And I guess the theory behind it is if your placenta fails, you're going to miscarry anyway. But my thing was like, can we give it a running start, please? So that's my trying to conceive with PCOS story. I hope you enjoyed it or it helped you in some way. If you have any questions or comments or ideas for new videos, please comment below and I will answer you. You can also Snapchat me, mommy.goggles at Snapchat. And I think my email is also on YouTube. So check it out. Hopefully we can connect and baby dust to everybody. It's possible. Bye.